Okay, welcome to the motion graphics introduction tutorial. This tutorial is going to be in two parts, and for this first part I'm going to show you guys how to just get two objects interacting with each other. You should have hopefully had a look at the very basics of this, so what we're going to do here is we're going to look at separating elements of objects and using an external script which is free for you guys to locate and download. It's quite useful. So what I've done here is I've got a scene where I've modelled two rocks. Okay, I've got some materials down here that I'm going to add to it shortly. But what we're going to try and do is we're going to get these two rocks interacting. We're going to get this top rock falling onto the first one, and when it lands it's going to split up into smaller pieces and fall onto the floor. Okay, so the first thing we're going to need is a floor, so we'll create one here, and we'll go into another view and we will just move that onto there. Okay, so for our first delve into motion graphics and simulation tags, what we're going to add onto the two objects here, the rock one, which is on the bottom, and the floor, we're going to add simulation tags. Okay, and these simulation tags are going to be both collider body. Okay, and what that will do is it will stop them being dynamic. If you click on the tag here, you'll see dynamic is off. If I was to add the other type of tag, which is rigid body, you'll see that this tag, this drop down becomes on. Okay, we don't have an option for on because it's a collider body, but the dynamics would be on, and you would have a whole set of other options as to how those dynamics are going to work. Okay, so next thing I'm going to do is we're going to look at getting this top rock to fall into the bottom one. If we add a rigid body tag to that rock and press play, nothing happens. The reason nothing happens is because in order to apply motion dynamics to an object, it has to have a MoGraph object as part of it. Okay, so for example, fracture would work here. So we can create a fracture object and put our rock into it, and then create a rigid body tag, and we will find that one rock falls, lands on the other one, and kind of skids off to the side. So it's not perfect, but it's getting there. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is, just based on the way that that was falling, is we're going to turn this rock round because it's on a bit of an angle here, and just to make it slightly better, we want the rock falling towards us. Okay, so, and then I'm going to take this top rock out of the fracture object. Okay, we're not going to use that just yet. Okay, what I'm going to show you now is a script called XBreaker. Okay, it's really useful. If I load up, find that here, if you download it, if I just give you a preview of what it does, you can see how much code there is in there, and you can see what it does. Well, you probably can't see what it does, but you can see how much is involved in making it do what it does. Okay, there's a specific reason why I'm showing you all that, because what it operates is not a single command. There is the address for the download just there. I will put it up on the screen so that you guys can go have a visit, and you can download that and use it. Okay, to implement the Xcoder script, or any script, you need to go, regardless of whether you're on Windows or a Mac, you need to go into your Cinema 4D folder with the version you're using, library, scripts, and paste it in there. And what you will find is you will more than likely need to shut Cinema 4D down and start it up again, before it will recognise that script. But when you do, you should be able to go to the script menu, user scripts, and we have Xbreaker there. Okay. So the reason I showed you all that code was because if I use Xbreaker here, I'm not going to actually use it, I'm just going to show you the window. If I use Xbreaker and click break now, it doesn't operate one command called break now. What it does is it runs a script, and the script has got hundreds of commands in it. It's an automated process, so it's like a batch command or a macro or anything like that, where you can automate a series of commands. So if I press break now and don't like the result and press undo, I haven't undone this command. I've undone the last of a few hundred commands that Xbreaker does for me. So what I need to do is I need to make copies of my objects before I do the break now, because if I don't do them, if I don't make copies and I want to undo what it did, I've got no chance, because it will perform way more commands than Cinema 4D will allow me to undo. Okay. The other thing you'll notice is that there is no close button or stop button or anything on this Xbreaker window, so you will need to press escape to get out of it. Okay, I'm only going to apply it to Rock 2 for now. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make a copy of Rock 2, drag it down to the bottom and hide it in both the editor and the renderer. Okay, and I recommend you do that with every single object that you are going to perform Xbreaker on. So we'll click on Rock 2, we'll go to Script, User Scripts and Xbreaker. I very rarely mess around with any of the settings except pieces. And what you will find is that the more you do, the more it will break it up, but the more your computer may struggle. The way these rocks have been created, I was looking at it earlier, and inputting numbers such as 15 into there just really deform the way the rock looks, and it doesn't look good at all. So through the process of trial and error, 5 seems to be quite good. Okay, you can go further into it after that, but just go in small steps. So put 5 in there and click break now. What you'll find is that Rock 2 has now been converted into a group called Rock 2 Xbreaker. And if I expand it, what you can see is that it's broken it up into 5 pieces. Okay. If I want, I can break each one of these pieces up. I'll do it with 1. I'll put 3 into there. So we can just move round. Okay, have a look at what it's done to our rock. Okay, not too bad. Okay, I'll delete the simulation tag off there because I'm going to have to redo that now anyway. Okay, so what you'll see that it has done, it has applied a material. It's created 2 materials here called outside cut and inside cut. Basically, what these materials and these 2 selection tags here are doing on every piece is allowing you to apply a different material to the outside of an object than the inside cuts, so that when it breaks open you can actually see a different texture in there, which can be really useful. It's not something we're going to use now, but as you can imagine, not everything that you would break open would have exactly the same texture on the inside, so just bear that in mind. However, I'm going to delete those, I'm going to delete those, and I'm going to delete the selection tags because we don't need them. Okay, I'm now going to create my fracture object again, and rather than just drag this Rock 2 Xbreaker group into the fracture object, I'm going to select the individual pieces. I'm going to drag them into the fracture object and get rid of this. Okay, and now I can put my simulation tag back. Okay, and I can press play. So you can see what that does. It's not exactly what we want. If I click onto my rigid body tag, you'll see that individual elements is top level. Normally that will keep the object held together, but the way it's been built, it's not keeping all of the objects together. So we can actually turn that off. And we can get it to operate like that. We can even, if we want, we can even swap the two objects round, which might look quite good because we could get one to crush the other. So just swap them around in the order, and that's just for me. Okay, so this top one is going to have the dynamics tag attached, and this one here is going to have ruler tag attached. So we're actually swapping them around. So if we move this one up there, and we move that one there, we can put these back. And this just shows you how easy it is to swap the objects around. So we're going to have this bottom object here, like so. We're going to have this top object, which, as it's now falling, we need to also put into a fracture object. We're going to put the simulation tag rigid body, and here we're going to have a simulation tag rigid body. Okay, we're going to press play. Okay, so what you tend to find is that one object, the object at the bottom, is falling slightly onto the floor, and it is breaking straight away. So what we're going to do is, where it says trigger immediately, we're actually going to trigger on collision. So as I press play, the rock at the bottom doesn't split until the rock on top hits it. Okay, again, you might notice that the rock is falling quite slowly. That's just due to the calculations it's making. It will fall at the normal frame rate when you render it. Okay, because Cinema 4D does have gravity, and gravity is 9.8, I believe. Okay, so Cinema 4D gravity value is the same as real gravity value, so it should fall at appropriate speeds. One thing you will find, as it falls, it doesn't react very well. This tends to go skidding off into the distance. First thing I'm going to do, if you notice I've got 90 frames at the bottom here, I'm going to up that to 500 and just open the preview to see all of them. Okay, because we just want to be able to have a little bit more room to play with. But this will give you more of an idea of the objects eventually stopping. Okay, remember this is a floor, so it will go to the horizon when you render it. Okay, so that's not great. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the dynamics object that we've got attached to this, and we're going to go to force, and we've got something here called linear damping. Okay, so if we apply 70% to that, bear in mind we've also got dynamics on the floor. Okay, so you can see it's much better in terms of realism. Okay, this rock that is stayed in one piece was also sliding a little bit, so we're going to just give that linear damping 50% because it doesn't do much linear movement at all. Okay, so It's looking all right. What we're going to do is we're just going to apply hyperNURBS to each of these fractures. Obviously you can see what that's doing to our render time. The good thing is that you can switch these off when you're in the editor. When you're in the renderer, obviously you want them on. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to apply the two materials that I've got here. You guys, you've done the materials session, so you should be able to generate some of your own. But as I do this, you can see what, now that I've had the materials, you can see that the computer's got no hope with hyperNURBS on in the renderer. But at least it gives you an idea of where the objects are. If I just go to sky, just give it the standard global illumination, ambient occlusion type scenario, it just allows you to have a slightly better view of what it will look like. Okay, so as you can see, it's actually a really useful rock texture. It's also quite useful rock shape, and coupling that with the Xbreaker script, you can get some real nice fragments. If you have a look at the composition tutorial, which is I don't believe is available now, but it will be very shortly, what that will then show you is how to do some projection mapping, and you'll be able to get a picture of maybe some desert sand with some real boulders, and then you can stick your boulder in the middle and have them interacting, and you can get it to look really effective. Okay, so that's the end of part 1. I'll show you how to make a dynamic chain in part 2, and then show you how to incorporate some of these elements together. Okay, so part 2 of this tutorial, we're going to look at developing an interactive chain. So creating some chain links which will recognise each other, link together, and perform dynamically as you would expect. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create our chain link. The chain link is going to be made using SweepNURBS. So the first thing we need to do is to create our first link. And we do that by creating a rectangle. Okay, the rectangle needs to be the same dimensions as your chain link, and when you're happy with that, just tick rounding, and that is going to round off the edges and give us that chain link shape. Mine has it automatically, but if your radius for the rounding isn't quite at its maximum, just turn it up to its maximum. It will stop when the radius gets to its largest point, okay, and it gives you that nice rounded edge. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a circle. This circle is going to be for our path that we extrude along this chain link shape. Okay, so we're going to create a SweepNURBS, and we're going to put both those objects into the SweepNURBS. Okay, so obviously the circle is slightly too large, so we're going to turn that right down. Okay, and we're going to use that as our chain link. The chain is going to be created from a cloner object, which means that we only ever have to work with this single link. Okay, so anything we do, any modifications we make, if we want to go back and tweak them again, very easy to do, because we'll only ever officially have one chain link, and the rest will be used from a clone object. So we can carry on if we want, and we can make our chain, we can get interact. However, the majority of computers, and particularly laptops, will fall down quite a lot. In fact, my laptop quite often turns chains of fairly low quality into meshes during the editor. Okay, so what you certainly don't want to do is have a high quality chain to work with in the editor. You can turn the settings back up before you render, get a nice effect, but while you're working with it in the editor you need to reduce the quality of this drastically. Okay, so the way we do that is, if you notice here on the circle and here on the rectangle, we have got an option for angle. That angle is set at 5 degrees. If we were to up that to say 45, and we go to our circle and we put it onto 45 again, what you'll see, we go on to here, that we've reduced the number of segments considerably. Okay, this is going to help us save memory and hopefully allow our chain to operate a little faster in the editor before we go back and we turn the settings back up for new render. Okay, so we're going to create our cloner object. This is going to turn one link into a chain. We're going to drag our sweep NURBS into the cloner. We'll zoom out so we can see what's going on. Okay, if I click on the cloner there, you can see what it's doing. Is the default setting for a cloner object is linear, so it's going to be in any particular line. Okay, you can change that based on the settings. The count default is 3. Okay, so we've got 3 in total. Notice it's not making 3 clones, there's 3 objects in total. And the only value here is 50 centimeters in the y-axis, so each clone is 50 centimeters above the previous. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to turn that to 0. So you'll notice that there are still 3 chain links here, but because they're not moved in any direction, they're all over the top of each other, so you can only see it as one. So we're going to go to a different view, and we're going to zoom in. Just press S when you've got an object highlighted. It will jump straight to it. And we're going to use our X movement on the cloner object to move our objects so that they interact. And they look a little bit more structured towards the chain. The value here for me is 78 centimeters, or minus 78 centimeters. Yours will be entirely different because it all depends on the size of your first chain link. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to up the number of clones that we're going to have. So we've got something resembling a chain. Now obviously they're all facing the same direction, which isn't very good. So what you need to do is you need to look at the rotation values of the cloner object. Okay, and just go through them and see which one rotates them in the right direction. So we know it's that. So if we go into middle one, which is pitch, and we enter 90 into there, it will rotate each link 90 degrees on from the previous one. Okay, the important thing here is that we have both end links facing the same way. This is so that we can feed something through them, a bar for them to both hang off, a loop, whatever we want to do, and it's easier to get it to interact. If I reduce the number of links down by 1, you can see that they're facing different directions and it's not going to work. So we're going to get something for the chain to swing off, which is just going to be a cylinder. We're going to change direction to Z. And we're going back into our front view. I'm going to turn the radius of this down. We're going to move it more towards the end. Okay, we don't need to do anything more with it. You guys are more than capable of creating something more fancy for it to hang off. Okay, we may do that a bit later on, but certainly not in this. Okay, if we add 2 of our simulation tags to these 2 objects, so if we right-click Simulation Collider Body onto the cylinder, this is going to keep the cylinder where it is, but it's going to allow other objects to move with it. We right click on the cloner and give it a rigid body. This is going to allow it to interact with other objects, but is also going to be susceptible to gravity and to being hit with things. Okay, right, now if I press play now, something bizarre will happen. Okay, the reason this is happening is because despite the fact that this chain link, or each chain link has got a hole in it, and the chain link next to it passes through that hole, the dynamics doesn't recognise that. What the dynamics sees is that these two objects are overlapping, and because they're overlapping, the collision has happened before you press play. So when you press play, what you get is the reaction of those two objects colliding. So obviously we want to stop that. First thing we want to do is we want to allow, just switch the cloner object off. Look at this first link. We want to allow each one of these polygons to be a separate object. Not necessarily separate object, but at least identifiable in a separate way from all of the others. Okay, so we could make it editable and we can separate them all manually, or we can add an explosion. Okay, for those of you who messed about with the explosion object before, it does exactly what it says in the tin, and it will explode an object. So we're going to drag it below the rectangle. If you put it in here, it messes up the sweep NURBS. If you put it at the bottom, it can work with the sweep NURBS. Okay, the value is at 0%, so it's not done anything. If I up the strength of the explosion object to 1%, you can see what happens, and that is not good. Okay, so I'm just going to drag that. I've actually added that to the rectangle. I wanted to add it to the sweep NURBS. Okay, so 1% will do this, which is not what we want, because it's exploded it, but it's exploded it way too much. So what we can put in the value of here is 0.01. So you can see it's actually flattened off the links a little bit. There's loads of things we can do later on to get the high-res version of the chain link back. Okay, but what it's done is it's technically exploded this chain link. It's exploded it by so little that you can't tell. So the effects are there, but it doesn't look like it's done anything, which is exactly what we want. Okay, so if I press play again, same thing happens. What we need to do is we need to add what's called a fracture object. And the fracture object is going to allow something with different segments to interact together. Okay, so there's two ways I can do this. One is to create a fracture object. I drag the sweep NURBS into the fracture object and then drag the fracture object back into the cloner, because what I want is for the fracture object to appear between the sweep and the cloner in this natural step. Okay, a much quicker way to do it is to have the sweep NURBS selected, go to the fracture object, hold down Alt while I click fracture, and what it will do, and this is with any object in Cinema 4D, if you hold down Alt while you create it, it will create it containing the object that you already have selected. So I had sweep NURBS selected and I created a fracture object, so it automatically puts it where I want it, which is exactly what I want to happen. So click on fracture object, and under mode we want explode segments and connect. This is going to allow the exploded segments to be connected back together. So as I press play, you can see that everything is interacting nicely together. Zoom out slightly. Okay, press play again. You can see, obviously there are a lot of calculations going on. If you have a faster computer than me, it will take slightly less time, but you will almost certainly find that it will slow down from the standard frames per second. When you render it, it will be at normal speed, but whilst it's calculating it on the fly, you're going to have some difficulties. Okay, so just to show you some of the interaction that can go on, if I create a cube, and put it down here, just get it slightly in front of there. I don't need to do anything with it except add a collider body and press play. . can see it's gone to mesh. But it reacts with any object that you put in front of it. Okay, so get rid of the cube, we don't need that. I'm going to come out of here, come back to the beginning. We're going to take our cylinder and we're going to copy it. We could create another one, but we'll have to add another. First of all, we'll have to get the dimensions right. We'll have to add another rigid body, get all the same properties. So just hold down Control and drag it down. You can duplicate it there, and then we can go back into our front view, and we can move it along to here. So what we've got is we've now got two cylinders, both with collider bodies attached. When we press play, it will hang off both of those. Okay. In terms of showing you how to do this, this is almost the last part of this section. What I want to do is I want to show you the result of comparing or combining the two parts of this tutorial. I haven't done that yet, and I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do yet, but I'll edit that in. However, just add a little bit more animation to this. So for here, go to coordinates, frame 0, we'll lock, holding down Control, we'll lock in the position of that. We'll press play, give it a chance to settle slightly. Okay, so stop, it's on frame 25 I think. We'll lock in the position of that again. Then we'll play it a bit more. Frame 45. And we'll move this in. Don't worry about the fact that it's left the chain behind. It's not dynamic enough to do that on the fly, particularly when play hasn't been pressed. But if we play it now, you can see that it will automatically interact with that. Okay, and the good thing is that we can go back to here and we can increase the values back to our chain. Okay, and we can set that to render, and it will render it at a lot higher quality. Okay, I'm not going to mess about with doing that just yet. I'll show you the results of some stuff, but that's it for part 2, and in a few seconds I will show you some examples of combining that together. Okay, thank you.